Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Today we are solving Game Week 5 dilemmas. So let's get straight into it. The first one is whether to keep or sell Alexander Isak. Now, obviously, he hasn't had the best start to the season, to be honest. He got an assist in Game Week 1, then he managed a goal in Game Week 3, and in Game Week 4 he came off at half time against Wolves. Now, that was an eye injury, I believe. I'm sure I read somewhere that he had kind of blurry vision at half time, so that's the reason he came off. That doesn't sound like it will keep him out for the next game, so if it does, then obviously he is definitely a sell, and there are plenty of forward options to look at, some of which we'll look at in the later part of this video. But if he is fine, and we should know beforehand because Newcastle do play midweek, I believe, so we should find out a bit more about that. But if he's fine, then I think he's a keep for this next week, because Fulham away isn't the worst fixture by any means. Their defence isn't bad, but it's not particularly great, so I think that's fine. Now, after that, he does have Man City at home, and that is also when there are some other fixture swings. So the likes of Arsenal, they have much better fixtures from Game Week 6, so you could be looking at Havertz. That's quite an easy switch. Or, well, before Wissa's injury, that Brentford also have a nice swing from Game Week 6, so maybe we would have been saying that could be going to Wissa to get some money out of that forward line. We're going to look at some Wissa replacements later in the video, so stay tuned for that. But the problem is, in Game Week 7, that Everton fixture is fantastic. Everton are like one of the worst defences, if not the worst defence in the league so far. They have conceded the most big chances in the league, I believe. And until we see Braithwaite back, then I can't see that changing, to be honest. And even when they do get Braithwaite back, it wouldn't surprise me if it carried on anyway. They just haven't looked solid or cohesive in any way at the back. So I personally do own Isak. If he's out this week, I'll sell him. If not, I'll keep him for this Fulham game. But there is quite a high chance that I sell him in Game Week 6 anyway, for an Arsenal player or for a cheap striker. So yeah, I think he's a keep this week if he's fit, but I would probably look to sell him next week. Okay, next up it's Eze. Quite a few FPL managers have already sold Eze. Quite a few sold him last week. Some have already sold him this week. So is he a keep or is he a sell? I personally think he's a keep. I own Eze. I will likely be keeping Eze. Obviously, it is far from ideal that Palace got a penalty and he didn't take it. However, Glasner, their manager, said after the game that Palace have two penalty takers. It's Nketiah and it's Eze. So I don't think we'll never see Eze take a penalty again, but it will be very difficult for Eze and anyone else at Palace to take penalties away from Mateta now that he's scored until he misses. I believe that it's probably not 50-50 on the next penalty. I would say it's probably more 60-40 or even 70-30 in the case of Mateta. Although I still don't particularly think that makes Eze a bad pick. He plays 90 minutes, so when Mateta's off the pitch, which isn't that often, granted, but when he is off the pitch, Eze will be on penalties. And even though that isn't very often, Eze plays 90 minutes. He plays very attacking. He is kind of the hub, he's the main focal point for all of their attacks. Everything flows through him. So he'll still get returns. He's on set pieces. So I don't think we'll see a lack of returns from him. The fixtures in the next few are pretty good as well. I don't think the Man United defence is particularly great, so that Man United at home fixture is good. As we just mentioned, Everton are terrible defensively, so that Everton fixture is good in Game Week 6. Liverpool and Forest isn't great in 7 and 8, but you may be able to bench him or you can probably get through it. But either way, it's not the best. Tottenham at home is another pretty good fixture attacking wise. So for me, he's a hold. I don't think I'm looking to sell Eze at this point. Okay, so the third player we're going to look at is Gvardiol. He didn't start at the weekend for Man City against Brentford. Now, we've seen in the first 3 weeks that Rico Lewis was playing right back and then he was pushing up into the attacking kind of 8 role. That meant Gvardiol stayed deeper in the back 3, which wasn't good for Gvardiol. Obviously, last season we saw him in this really attacking role where he'd just bomb down, get involved in all the attacks, whereas this season we hadn't seen that. Now, at the weekend, Cole Walker started at right back with Rico Lewis at left back. That didn't seem to work at all. So at half time, Pep made the change, brought on Gvardiol for Rico Lewis. And because it was Walker playing at right back, we saw Gvardiol playing that attacking role that he was last season. And he could have had an attacking return. He was brilliant in that attacking role at the weekend. So with Nathan Ake injured, we all expected Gvardiol's minutes to be fine. And I think going forward they probably will be. It's just, it will always depend whether Walker plays at right back or Rico Lewis plays at right back, because that will have a huge impact on Gvardiol's role and whether he sits deep or whether he gets forward like last season. So I think minutes-wise he's probably fine, but I don't think we can expect him to always play that attacking role. Fixtures-wise, the next 2 aren't great. He's got Arsenal at home, which is obviously pretty poor. Newcastle away, which is a red fixture, but it's not as red as Arsenal. So I don't really hate the Newcastle away fixture. The next 3 are great. Fulham at home, Wolves away, and Southampton at home. And it's not just the next 3 from after game week 9. They're also great. So he's good long term. I think if you can bench him this week against Arsenal, then I would just hold him through this next couple of weeks, I think. Because I do think his minutes are fine. You could potentially look at doing a short-term move to Robertson for a few weeks, but it's probably not worth the 2 transfers to take him out and bring him back in. So if I owned Gvardiol, I would probably keep him and look to bench him this week. Okay, so the next player we are looking at is Ollie Watkins. Should you buy him? Now, everything's changed for Ollie Watkins. After the weekend, he's obviously got his first 2 goals of the season. Not only that, the more important thing that we've seen is that he played 84 minutes. Now, up until this point, he'd only played a maximum of 65. So him playing 84 minutes is quite a big deal going forward. Now, they obviously have Champions League during this midweek, and they have other cup games as well. They will have a lot more fixture congestion than they did last season. So I don't think we're going to see 90 minutes after 90 minutes from Ollie Watkins this season. Another reason for that is that Jørgen is absolutely fantastic. Every time he's got minutes, he has been brilliant. So I don't think that Emery will be worried about resting Ollie Watkins and giving Jørgen minutes. I think that we'll see that more this season. Although what is good for Watkins is that at the weekend we saw that Emery's not scared to play both of them at the same time, which seems to work quite nicely, to be honest. And I think Ollie Watkins did an interview after the game saying how kind of they do work well together, which is probably a good thing. Well, it's definitely a good thing for Watkins, as that could lead to more attacking returns if they combine as well. So I think Ollie Watkins is a buy for sure. If you've got Alexander Isak and it turns out he's injured, then I think if you've got money to go to Watkins, I would do that. The next few fixtures are obviously fantastic. Wolves at home, Ipswich away, Man United at home is a good one. Fulham away is pretty good. Bournemouth at home is not bad either. The fixtures are there, and it looks like he's now back and can play almost a full game. So I think he is definitely a buy. Okay, next up we're looking at Salah. Should we be buying Salah for those that don't already own him? Now, this week with City playing Arsenal, Salah is likely to be the best captaincy option. I will put out a captaincy model video tomorrow for those that are interested, but I am expecting Salah to probably be number one. I haven't run the numbers yet, so I haven't actually looked, but it would surprise me if he isn't number one with Bournemouth at home. Not that Bournemouth are a particularly bad defence or a bad team in general. I've been impressed with them this season, especially going forward, but it's obviously a better fixture than Arsenal is for Haaland and Man City is for Saka. The other option, there is some other good options as well, like Son plays Brentford at home, another good captaincy option. Palmer plays West Ham, another pretty good one. But yeah, I'm expecting Salah to be top captain pick this week for the model. Now, for those that don't own Salah, there are a couple of ways to go about it. If you're planning to wildcard in game week 6, then if you own Saka, if you own Haaland, you can take out those guys who have the bad fixture this week, then get in Salah, use the funds from taking out Saka, Haaland to get in Salah, and then you can wildcard Saka and Haaland back in game week 6. If you're definitely wildcarding in game week 6, then I think that's a good move. I would definitely do that. And the forwards you can buy, we'll look at some budget forwards after this. But obviously there's the likes of, Ollie Watkins we just talked about. If you've got enough money to go, say, Saka and Haaland to Watkins and Salah, then that looks great, to be honest. So if you're definitely on wildcard 6, then I think that is the play. If you're not on wildcard 6, or if you're not sure whether you want to use your wildcard in game week 6, then I think it's a lot more difficult. I think if you've got enough funds to go straight from Saka to Salah, then it definitely is something to consider, although you probably would just be reversing that move in game week 6 because you'd want Saka back for Arsenal's good fixtures. If you can't afford to do that in one move, then I think there is probably an argument to go without Salah, which is what I'm tempted to do for my team. Unless João Pedro, Isak, Saka are all injured, I don't think I'm leaning towards not using my wildcard in game week 6 and holding it a little bit longer. Haven't definitely decided on that. I'll talk about that more in my team selection video later in the week. But I am tempted to hold on to Haaland, hold on to Saka, because I know I want them in game week 6, and go without Salah. That does mean going without probably the best captain option this week. And I've also got Haaland and Saka still in my team then, who really don't have the ideal fixture. But if I can get through game week 5 without too much of a red arrow, then my team will be set pretty well for game week 6 onwards. So that's kind of my thoughts. If you are wildcarding in game week 6, then I think you do get Salah. However you do that is up to you. But if you're not going to wildcard in game week 6, then I think there is definitely an argument for just going without and basically hoping that he doesn't ruin us too much. Okay, next up we're going to look at some budget forwards because Wissa is now out for a couple of months, Brentford have said. So if you own Wissa, you're going to need to move him on. And you could probably bench him. If you've got a deep squad, then maybe you could bench him for a week. But some teams will have him as a 7th attacker, so they'll need to replace him. And we're going to look at 4 options right now. All kind of have different strengths and are for people in different situations. So Jamie Vardy is the first one we're going to look at. Now, the situation that I would buy Jamie Vardy in is if you are wildcarding in game week 6 and you need to get some funds. Maybe you're moving Isak down to a budget striker to be able to afford Saka up to Salah, for example, as we just mentioned. In that case, if you're definitely wildcarding in game week 6, I think Jamie Vardy is the best option. He plays Everton at home this week. As we mentioned earlier in the video, Everton have been terrible defensively to start this season. So you only need a player for 1 week, which makes him perfect because he plays at Arsenal in game week 6, but you'll be wildcarding, so you can get rid of him. Everton at home is the fixture. So if you need a player for just 1 week, a cheap player, then Jamie Vardy is the one to go for. Okay, next up we have Jørgen, Strand, Larsen. I'm sure I've pronounced that wrong, but anyway. Now, this is a completely different situation to Vardy. If you need someone for very, very long term, for example, if you wildcarded in game week 4 and you included Wissa, then you don't have a wildcard to use for quite a while, so you need a long-term replacement. Now, you can see on screen the next few fixtures for Wolves are pretty bad. They've got Aston Villa away, they've got Liverpool at home, Brentford away, which is okay, then Man City at home, and then Brighton away, which is okay, not the best. But that Brighton away fixture in game week 9 is the start of a fantastic run for Wolves. By the time they've got to game week 9, they'll have already played Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, City and Villa. So that means that they won't play any of them teams again till at least game week 19. Meaning that their fixtures are fantastic from game week 9 onwards for a while. So if you need a budget forward that you can keep in your team and kind of stash on the bench in them Liverpool and Man City games, but we'll have them for game week 9 onwards, then Strand Larsen looks like a very nice budget option. He started the season a little bit shaky, but in the game at the weekend against Newcastle, he looked absolutely brilliant. So yeah, if you need a cheap budget option for the long term, then I like Strand Larsen. Okay, so the next budget option we're looking at in terms of forwards is Eddie Nketiah. Now, one good thing that we know about Nketiah is that he's going to start games because Glasner came out and said we didn't spend X amount of millions for this guy not to start. So pretty much said that he's going to start games. And in game week 4, in his first start, he had the joint most shots in the whole league with Watkins and Haaland. All 3 of them had 6 shots, and all 6 of those were in the box. Granted, none of them were particularly high XG, but it shows that he's going to be in and around the box and he's going to be taking a lot of shots. And these next 2 fixtures are good for that. Man United at home, their defence is ropey. Everton away, their defence is beyond ropey, as we've mentioned. So the next 2 fixtures are great. Then the 2 after that aren't the best. Nottingham Forest shouldn't be a green fixture in my opinion. Their defence is pretty good. But Liverpool and Forest, yeah, not the best fixtures. But these next 2, fantastic. And then Tottenham at home in game week 9 is pretty good as well. You can hold this guy long term, so I think that he's another good budget option if you need a Wissa replacement. Okay, now the last option we're going to look at, and probably my favourite option, is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Now, the reason that I like Dominic Calvert-Lewin is, 1, he seems to be playing a very, very good amount of minutes now. 2, he is likely to be on penalties. And 3, his fixtures are unbelievable. So Everton don't play Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea or Man City until game week 15, in which they then play them all within 4 weeks. So for the next 10 game weeks, you've basically got a fixture that you can play him in every single week. So that's why he's my favourite. Everton, as we've talked about so many times in this video, look terrible at the back. However, going forward, they've looked all right. McNeil seems to be, or certainly in game week 4, he was kind of drifting more inside into more of a 10 role, and he was just creating all sorts, which Dominic Calvert-Lewin will be getting on the end of. So yeah, I think he's probably my favourite Wissa replacement if you need somebody for the long term. That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. If you did like it, make sure you drop a like, make sure you drop a subscribe, helps a lot, and I will see you in the next one.